Hari Om. Let's start with the prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanura Mardhanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhusya Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Namadeva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We are looking at the fundamental objection against Advaita Vedanta by Bhagavan Ramana, and the major objection is against the avidya, and that too the locus of avidya, who has the ignorance. And in the process we are looking at jnanam, that removes the avidya, and the questions are also raised that jnanam has to be opposite to avidya. So if I have to know Brahman, that means Brahman becomes an object of knowledge. And in what way the object of knowledge Brahman is different from the other objective knowledges. So in that there is a difference between the knowledge of Brahman versus knowledge of any particular knowledge, and that's what we are analyzing, how knowledge takes place through Vutti Jnanam. Then we will go back into analysis of on how to address Bhagavan Ramanuja's objection and where the problem is and how to resolve that one. So the question is right now how the Vritti Jnanam takes place, and according to Advaita, the knowledge is of two types. One is Vritti Jnanam, another is Swarupa Jnanam. Vritti Jnanam is the knowledge of through Vritti by phalam, that means the result of the objective analysis will give you the result, and therefore that jnanam that is a product or the result or a phala of an inquiry into a particular subject, and therefore all objective knowledge are called Vritti Jnana Phalam. That means it's a fruit of the result of the inquiry using a proper means of knowledge or proper pramana. So a simple thing is we find out how a perception or perceptual knowledge occurs. So we try to differentiate the perceptual knowledge versus say knowledge from the memory. So we'll come back to that, but basically we should have clear understanding how knowledge takes place according to Advaita Vedanta. So when I look at an object, normally we say, yes, this is a chair. Why? I see it. What exactly I see has to be known. So I do not really see a chair as a chair. What I am seeing is only reflected light from the chair. So the form of the chair belongs to the object there, and what I am seeing is only reflected form. That means it's a reflected attributes of the object. So object as it is cannot be seen. All knowledge is, number one, attributive knowledge. It's not the object per se, because there is no substance out of it. There is no chair substance, even though the chair is defined. Is what is a chair? Chair is that which has chairness. That's what the Nyaya philosophy says. Now what is a chairness? Chairness is that which chair has. So it becomes a circular definition in a way. So therefore I cannot really define a chair as a chair other than a particular form. We call it as a chair. So form is grasped, but form itself belongs to the chair. So I cannot remove the form from the chair for me to see. What I see is only reflected form of the object. This is what science says. All the traditional Vedanta that follows even Advaita Vedanta, the including the Vedanta Paribhasha, follows the Mimamsaka theory that says mind grows and grasps the object and brings along with senses bringing along the attributes. So attributes and the sense input in terms of attributes are brought in. But fact of the matter is, object is still there. What I am bringing is only reflected reflected attributes of the object. This has to be clear, and that's more scientific. And what is the rest of it is, once I bring the image of the object through the eyesight, for example, and it forms an electrical signal. An electrical signal is converted into software, and that's called thought. So there is a code that transforms the electrical, which we call neurons, into a thought process, and science cannot discover it because it's not an objective thing that can be used, because all the objective at the most are neurons. So we have to go to something different, but we know that just from the computer knowledge, electrical signal is converted into software through a programming language. So Lord, as though, provided a programming language that converts the input from the senses into the thought process. All this is implied. But what I see is, I see a thought. But thought is locus, as though contents of the thought are nothing but the reflected attributes of the object out there. All that should be clear. So what I am seeing is only reflected attributes depending upon the reflecting medium, and if it's not very clear, the things are very foggy and or very, very foggy. If there is, then I cannot fuzzy logic. I cannot really see what it is. If the senses are not able to grasp correctly all the attributes that belong to the object. Now, the knowledge takes place when the light of consciousness from the mind, or reflected light of consciousness, which is Chidabhada, that reflected light again falls on the thought and then reflected back to the mind. So when it goes back to the mind now knows this is a thought. So mind, it says, I am a knower and this is a known. Mind is also an object, but in the it is now conscious entity, the Chidabhasa, with the mind says there is a subject I and there is an object thought. So both are result of this ahamvritti and idamvritti. Ahamvritti means I know this is a thought. So I thought arises whenever this thought rises. So this ahamvritti, it spontaneously occurs whenever the idamvritti, that means this thought rises. When I see an object, chair, I say, this is a chair. How do I know? Say, I can see. So I am seer. So I know this is a chair. So I know thought is also there. The object thought, this is a chair also there. When I turn to the table, now the chair thought is gone, the table thought has come. But I thought remains whenever there is a reflected back. Therefore, subject-object distinctions are arising in the mind. Both are called vritti jnanam. But here, the vritti is a phalam is there. That means the result of this knowledge is, I know a chair, I know the table, I know this, I know that. So every knowledge of this and that involves objects. Therefore, this is a particular knowledge, and this particular knowledge arises through a pramana. And this pramana is perception in this case. So whenever I see an object through the senses are the ones that are gathering information. It can be forms or color. Color is, I see a red color, I see this is a red chair and the blue chair, and the theory of color is that when in the Vibgayar, that is 7 colors are there, that which it absorbs all other colors except red. Therefore I am seeing this color is a red color, the other chair is a blue color, because it is absorbing all other colors except blue. So it is, I am able to see only blue color of the 7 colors involved in the white light. So every color that I say is due to the reflection coming only from that. Suppose I put only blue light and there is a red chair, I will not see the red chair because blue light is getting absorbed. I see only a dark chair. So therefore, the color and all that all coming only depending upon the reflection and absorption by the chair, and whatever I see the varieties of colors and forms is only information bringing in. This is all perceptual knowledge occurs. This is a particular knowledge. This is called vritti jnana phalam. And this is different from Swarupa Jnanam, Swarupa Vyapa Vritti Jnanam, and that will come about later. Now, when we talk about the knowledge from the memory, when I say, hey, do you remember cow? So when I say cow, even though I am not seeing a cow here, I am bringing from the memory a thought that yes, image of the cow is also brought in the mind. Now this knowledge is not through the senses, because senses have done its previous job and they stored information of the form and the name in the memory. So when I bring the memory back and say cow, so now I see a cow. So where do I see cow? I see in the mind only, because a thought of cow rises in the mind from the memory. Now when I look at the thought of that, then how does the knowledge occurs? The knowledge occurs not from the perceptual process. It's not just a simple vritti that is forming. It is that vritti coming from the memory, right? So this is called essentially Sakshi Jnanam also, or Avidya Vritti also, a vritti related to a particular thought in the memory also. So perception sometimes includes the memory, and these are called moods of the mind. So when the mood of the mind changes, when I recollect the thought of a cow, so cow thought arises in my mind, and I say I am seeing cow, but not through the perceptual process, but through the imagination. Imagination is nothing but a thought still raising in the mind without the sense input. Now in the same way, the knowledge of, for example, say I am happy, I am angry, or all the emotions that arises in the mind, how do I know? So it is not, it is a perturbation of the mind, all right, and therefore it is a vritti, all right, but who is the seer of the vritti? As though it is being illumined by the Sakshi through the mind itself. That means the perturbation of the mind itself is known in the mind because of the light of consciousness illumining the perturbed mind. So mind itself is the object of knowledge, and mind is also involved as the knowledge. As I am angry is also mind knows also. So therefore it is the not perceptual through the sense input, but it's also perturbation of the mind, which is called vritti, but it's not same vritti as related to the object pramana also. This is coming from the memory. But these are all classifications of the knowledge. Even those inferential knowledge that comes is not due to perception, but anumana pramana, where it also raises as a product of a deductive logic that goes in the mind, where I have a vyapti, that means a concomitant relationship between what I see and what it is there. Like I see a smoke and I deduce there is a fire, because in the previously through perceptual process I have established relationship between the sadhyam and hetu. So it's the hetu and the sadhyam. Hetu is the what I am seeing, and sadhyam is the conclusion that I make out of it. So all objective sciences are based on this, where I am deducing something from based on the data. So data is perceptual data, and conclusion and inference is based on from logical analysis, where I conclude. And this knowledge is also again a vritti jnanam only, and therefore all this knowledge, that's all chemistry knowledge, physics knowledge, so that removes the particular ignorance of that knowledge. So if I say I do not know chemistry, so for that ignorance of chemistry, I need knowledge of chemistry to eliminate that ignorance. So in all these knowledges, we are talking about knowledges, we are as though plural, but these are particular vritti phala jnanam. That means there is a result that I now know chemistry. So there is a result. So I can recollect that result or knowledge of chemistry whenever somebody asks me chemistry questions. So therefore, this particular knowledge that we are talking about are vritti jnanams. That's different from, now we say, Swarupa knowledge. Swarupa means the knowledge of Brahman or knowledge of the self. Why is it different? And that's what the major objection of Bhagavan Ramana also says, you are differentiating knowledge which cannot be differentiated. And another point is, you are trying to know Brahman, Because that's what you say, I don't know Brahman. And if you don't know Brahman, that means Brahman has become an objective knowledge. So Brahman, if becomes an objective knowledge, Brahman becomes an inert, because any object according to your Advaita is an inert entity. So now you are making Brahman as an inert, whereas at the same time you say Brahman is Satchida, the Jnana Swarupam. So there is a contradiction in your theory. That's what Bhagavan Ramanuja objects. Now, how do we address this? We are addressing that Brahman also, we agree with you, Brahman cannot be an object of knowledge. At the same time you say I am gaining, yes, that's also right. So how can you compromise these two? So that's why we have to look at difference in the knowledge itself. One is Swarupa Jnanam, another is called Vritti Jnanam. So all objective knowledge, that means everything that I know, this, and even including the mind also, I know mind, mental moods, and that's why people keep changing their mind, because they know what is there and they want to change it. So therefore, this is all part of objective knowledge. Whereas the Brahman is not an objective knowledge, because we say Brahman cannot be known. Then why do you say, how I am going to gain a knowledge of Brahman? You don't gain knowledge of Brahman. What you gain is remove the ignorance that is covering it. So we said the Brahman cannot be covered. We're only talking about at the individual level, I have wrong notions about myself and about the Brahman. So about the world. So this is what is I am taking the reality, the world is real, and what I have to understand is this is not real, this is something, depends on something else. Something else is the one that is cause for it. It's only apparently real, but I have to have a substantive knowledge in order to know the truth. How do I gain this? And that's why we quoted in terms of previously a sloka from the Viveka Chudamani, essentially Bhanu Prabha, that's a sloka 144. It says Bhanu Prabha Sanjanita Bhrapanktihi Bhanum Tirodaya Yatha Vijumbate Atmodita Hankrutihi Atmatattvam Tatha Tirodaya Vijumbate Swayam. This statement actually comes also from the Shri Shankara, where we say, I cannot see the sun. This is a simple example. Says, I cannot see the sun. So why you cannot see the sun? Because clouds are covering the sun. Says, they say, how do you know clouds are covering the sun? Because I can see the clouds, and I can see the clouds that are covering the sun. Sun is behind the clouds. So therefore, since when I say clouds are covering the sun, how did the clouds come into picture? It's because of the sun only. The clouds rise because of the sun only. Now, that clouds which rose because of the sun are covering the sun. The fact of the matter is, clouds cannot cover the sun. At the same time, the one who is underneath the clouds says clouds are covering the sun. I cannot see the sun. So therefore, how do you know, or how could you see the sun? Because of the sunlight only I could see the sun, clouds. So because of the sunlight, I could see the clouds, and that clouds is covering the sun, and because of those clouds, I cannot see the sun. So these are all complicated. So in the same way, how do I know I am ignorant? Because I am conscious of ignorance also. So how do you know you are conscious? That's why it's not an abhava rupa according to Advaita. It's a bhava rupa, means I know it also. I know that I am ignorant. That's why tad vijnanartam sa gurum eva abhigacche. So for that only the scripture says go to a teacher, because you know that you do not know. So I know what I know what I don't know. Since knowledge, ignorance is also I know, so I go to a teacher. And the teacher knows that he doesn't have ignorance. That means absence of ignorance also is known by the teacher. Absence of ignorance is known only because the presence of ignorance was known before. So when I go to the room, if I ask somebody, hey, is there a pot there in that room? So you go there and look at, is there a pot there in the room? He comes back and says, I don't see any pot. So how do you know there is no pot? So I could not see. If you could not see, then how do you know it is not there? That means he knows what is a pot, and that means he had the knowledge of pot, and now that knowledge of the pot, using that attribute content of the pot, now he looks around all the objects, and he cannot see any object that resembles the pot. Therefore, he says there is no pot there. So absence of the pot is also a knowledge. So similarly, a teacher is a teacher only he has the absence of the knowledge of the ignorance also. That means ignorance that he had, now he is no more ignorant, therefore he can teach also. So tadvidhi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. Krishna says in the 4th chapter, says you approach a teacher with an attitude of humility and ask appropriate questions. Then teacher will answer. Teacher has an obligation to answer because he was also in the same state before. So therefore, teacher knows the absence of ignorance and the student knows the presence of ignorance. Therefore, presence and absence of ignorance is known. But when say ignorance, when the knowledge removes the ignorance, the knowledge should be counter to that ignorance. So chemistry ignorance is removed by chemistry knowledge, physics ignorance is removed by physics knowledge. So how this Brahma knowledge will be removed, will be gained? That we will address in the next talk in terms of why this is a Swarupa Jnanam and it's not an object of knowledge. At the same time, that means there is no Phalavrutti. This we will analyze in the next talk. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.